If you want to learn more, I'll keep sharing.
Yeah, I'm like, I literally read information, digest it, simplify it, and share it. Like, I am not creating anything new. Everything is out there, but if you want to learn, like, from a professional, you know, here are the different kinds of professionals available.
So, I've never met you before in person. This is kind of cool to collab. Who are you? Who's Liz Enriquez?
Good question. Liz Enriquez. I'm currently in the stage of kind of redefining because I just quit my job. I was working in government for 7 years. So I feel like that was a big part of my identity, just really kind of stable, linear government employee with cool things on the side. So last month I decided to quit my job, take on some new projects. So I wouldn't say I'm discovering myself or trying to find myself, but I'm definitely trying to hone in on kind of my package and what I really am. So that's up in the air right now.
Cool. So you've quit your job, and how old are you?
27.
So you're 27 and you've already quit your job. What do you think is the key thing that you did to enable that? Like, what did you do?
Well, I definitely saved. So I saved over a year's salary just to make sure, you know, I really get irritated when people say, like, quit your job and follow your dreams and follow your passions, and then don't kind of suggest like a backup plan or a financial plan or some sort of plan. I'm like, okay, like, that's super risky, but have fun. So I didn't want to be in that boat, so quit my job after saving over a year's worth of salary. And then I also have been working with clients for a number of years now. I've had a side hustle for 3 years. So I've had almost all of those clients are still clients now.
Still with you?
Yeah, with me. And then I've picked up more clients. So I kind of quit my job and then just ramped up everything I was doing on the side. So.
Okay, cool. So what are you doing on the side right now? Like, what's your side hustle? What did you do?
Yeah, my side hustle started as a social media manager.
Yeah.
So I was managing social media accounts for different people. And I've kind of shifted directions there and evolved from that. And now I'm doing more digital management in general. So website edits, blog creations, blog posts, content creation. And my kind of recent project has been online courses. So I've been helping a client with online courses, and we're just doing more and more. So really, I help small business owners who don't want to touch technology at all, either do it for them or source someone to do that for them.
Okay, cool. And is that mostly, and those are the clients you had before? Is that what you're saying?
Those are the clients I had before, and most of them started as social media. And then as the world and kind of business changes, they realize that they need to do more things. Like, they need to do content. They need to do way more than just social media.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of fill that gap.
Cool. And in terms of social media, are we talking like Instagram, or are we talking like what are your main
Instagram and Facebook are my two main platforms.
And why those two?
That's just the ones that I find the most value for my clients, because they're mostly either health and wellness or food-based places, so they don't need to be on Twitter.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's where I first met you, was like, I think it was through Instagram.
Yeah.
Saw your Instagram account, and I was like scrolling through the photos, and I was like, oh my god, this person's very similar to me. She's talking about personal finance and like side hustle and the goal of like quitting your job and just kind of going after what you really want. Mm-hmm. And I think then you invited me to a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. So what's that Facebook group?
Yeah, so the Facebook group is called Personal Finance for Canadian Millennials, and essentially I've been really interested in blogging about personal finance, even though I don't have a financial background. But I started blogging in 2016 after I bought my house, mainly to talk about how I saved for the down payment and like kind of the surprises that happened with being a homeowner. Like, oh, look at all these bills I now have to pay, and really talking about it and bringing that out in the open, because I found like nobody was telling me how much I should have expected to pay for bills or things like that, and I wasn't finding that information readily available. So I blogged about that, and then just within the last few months, I really honed in on personal finance, is where I really like writing about it and talking about. So I was getting questions from people like, how do I invest, or how do I start investing? I'm like, ooh, I don't know. Like, I don't want to provide advice that isn't accurate. So I created this open kind of platform so that people could connect to either professionals or other people in their similar situation that they can talk to and connect to. And then I really just want to demystify money and get people talking about money, and then they can find the resources to take the next steps. But I'm that initial kind of stepping stone.
Yeah, the initial like push, or like
just
to introduce them into,
introducing them and opening it up for people, and like, look, there's other people talking about it, and don't worry, you're not the only one who doesn't know. Like, all these people don't know either. And I found it really important to bring in professionals and people who did know what they were talking about, because I didn't want just people, asking questions and then crickets, and people also answering the wrong things. Like, no, I want to bring in professionals, I want to bring in intermediates, and I want to bring in beginners so that we can all learn from each other.
I think that's one of my favorite things, that what you did was that after inviting me, I checked it out, and it was like, hey, this is like a community of people, and like the fact that you've built a community, and it's not all necessarily your voice, but you can kind of prod with questions, and like, how are you guys handling credit? How are you guys handling a mortgage? That kind of thing, and you kind of open up the conversation to so many other experts and just people sharing their own thoughts and stuff like that. It's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining it. And I shared some of your videos on there.
Yeah.
Because people literally asked about credit. I'm like, oh, Ben just made a video about this. Like, I don't think I need to reinvent the wheel. Like, this information is already out there. You just gotta connect people to the right resources.
Right.
And that's what I want to do.
Right. And that's so much what I find too, is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not like anything that you're coming up with or I'm coming up with is super proprietary. It's the information is there, it's online, but to kind of gather it all in one section, in one area where people can kind of just like, now I need to learn about personal finance, I'm going to go to this resource, and like, here it is. I can read endlessly.
Yeah, and it's non-biased too.
I'm
not going to present something because it's going to benefit me.
Right.
Like, this information is out there. And I also wanted it to be with a Canadian focus, because so much information, and you probably know this too, it's American. So you find so much stuff, and then it's like Roth IRA, whatever. They're American stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not relevant for me.
Like, what about our Canadian friends?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that's nice.
Yeah. Cool. And then did you also have other Instagram accounts? I thought you were doing something with like city.
I have an account. So my main kind of brand is Shoutouts Hamilton. So that's where I give shout outs to businesses in Hamilton. I love it. I just get to go around to different places in Hamilton, and sometimes, they pay for it or not, or I just promote Hamilton under my account.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Some Hamilton love.
Sweet. Yeah, I love Hamilton.
Is it hashtag HamOnt? Is that
hashtag so HamOnt.
So HamOnt? Okay.
Yeah, and people can use their hashtag. There's over 6,000 hashtags under hashtag so HamOnt, and people, tag what's happening in Hamilton, and I would repost them, or that's how I find out like all the hot spots in Hamilton before they get too full or busy.
That's really cool, and it's funny because that's how I currently, with all this stuff going on, like day job, side hustle, everything going on, investments, all that, it's like, how do you find out cool stuff going on in your city unless you're out there like walking around on the street? So you find it through social media and stuff like that. So it's accounts like that I actually like discover new restaurants, or like, this picture caught my eye, I'm gonna go check it out, that kind of thing.
I think social media is huge, especially for restaurants.
Yeah.
Like, I will purposely go try something because I saw it on social media.
Yeah.
And the more you see it, the more you're likely to go try it. So that's my role, kind of, to help businesses understand that and take advantage of it.
Yeah. I just want to throw this idea out there. We're getting away from personal finance, but we'll come back in a second. I want to talk about this whole thing about like Instagram influencers, and we always think of them as like gigantic, huge influence and all that kind of stuff. What's your take on it? Because if you run an account like the one you're doing, and what you just said, which is if you see something on social media, it kind of like gets you to go check it out, or influences you to go check it out. Do you think that we all like influence each other, even though you don't consider yourself in that role?
Absolutely. Well, there's micro influencers as well that don't have huge accounts, but like people in Hamilton who have a decent following could be micro influencers, because there's certain accounts here that most Hamiltonians know about, or Hamiltonians who want to know about things that others people don't know them. But yeah, and even your friends, like even if your friend who has 200 followers and they post something, you're like, oh, well, my friend liked it, so maybe that's, a place I should go check out. Word of mouth is the most effective way of marketing, and social media is just an extension of word of mouth.
I agree, yeah.
So.
I think we've gone through this big transition of like, it used to be word of mouth when it was back like the mom and pop shops and all that kind of stuff. And then we've gone to big box stores, and with the internet, you can spread your message all over the place. But if you come back to the value of word of mouth, like if you use the internet to spread your brand or your product and you connect on such a personal level with people, like that's the key thing.
It's also like a review. So reviews are super effective because in marketing you want to establish trust. And if you trust your friend who went to this place and they're like, they said it was good, so it's pretty much a review, it's word of mouth, it's using all of those elements of marketing by using social media. Yeah.
It's crazy. You can like reach so many people by pointing a camera at your face.
Yeah. It's a lot of work though. I think I got to a point, which is where I am now, is that I'm like, this is a lot of work. It can be tiring to be online and to be on social media and to always have posts and be consistent and have good content. Like that is a tiring thing. So
yeah, and time consuming.
Yeah, and time consuming. Yeah.
So what's the next like challenge for you? What are you facing right now? Like what are you trying to tackle, or where do you want to grow in terms of what your ambitions are?
I definitely want to continue to spread the word about personal finance. It's so important. I just see how much room there is to grow, especially for millennials.
Yeah.
Because it's not being talked about. So many people don't know the first thing about saving and budgeting, let alone investing. Like budgeting and saving, I think should be pretty standard for everybody. Like everybody should be doing this. So yeah, I just know that there's a lot to grow.
And there's different areas like, just speaking specifically about social media, like on Instagram, there's like an entire debt-free community of people. And then there's people that are interested in investing and how to invest better or more securely or whatever. And then there's people that are just interested in more income and like side hustles. So it's kind of like the entire
Then there's
spectrum.
Bitcoin people.
And there's Bitcoin people that
and
follow
the
you all the
traders.
time.
Yeah. Like, I don't want you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like half the messages you get are Bitcoin traders or like day traders.
Yeah. There is a lot. And actually, that took me a long time to kind of come to terms with, especially when creating my group, because I didn't know kind of who I wanted in the group. I mean, anyone's welcome, but I'm like, what if this turns into like a really debt-free, heavy zone, which is not the mindset that I'm in. So I'm like, I don't really want it to go that way.
Right.
So yeah, it was interesting to learn about all the different niches within the personal finance. For me, I'm about, for sure, side hustles. Like I think if you can have a side hustle, even if it's a side gig, so not necessarily you creating your own business, but picking something up on the side, like you're going to make so much more money than, nickel and diming 10 cents every, or like $2 every day for coffee. Like it's not really going to do much in the long run. Like you got to make more money. So I'm in more income camp, and yeah, for sure saving, budgeting, and investing camp. So.
Right. I think we agree on that. Like I see it as you have kind of three areas. You have your income as one, and your expenses as one, and everything you do in the middle with your money. So any kind of money you have left over between what you made and what you spent, what you do with that money is kind of super important to me. But I agree that income is like most important, because if you don't have enough income coming in, it doesn't matter what you do with that money in between. If you're nickel and diming yourself and you're buying everything super on sale or after it's expired or whatever, then like
there's a show on TLC, Extreme Couponing,
and
then there's also Extreme Cheapskates, and I'm like, you're spending so much time, like this, people on there are like, I spent all weekend cutting out these coupons. I'm like, all weekend? You know how much more money you could have been making if you spent that same amount of time saving 30 cents on your pasta?
Right. If you went all in on, let's say you had a strength in something and you could generate income through that, like it's going to squash any kind of savings you have. The only reason why I always tell people, like right off the bat when you're first getting into personal finance, is check your expenses, just because it is like, of all the three, it's kind of the easiest to immediately change for yourself. Like you can audit yourself and say like, where am I spending this money? Internet, cable, do I need cable anymore? Telephone bill, all that kind of stuff. And can you dial back? And that in combination with going all in on your strengths to get your income up, that's like, I feel like that's
Yeah, I always say
super
that
powerful.
too, the number one thing is just to create your budget. And not even to start restricting yourself, but just to track yourself. And then you can figure out your next steps from there. But
Right.
tracking your expenses or categorizing your budget, I think that's so valuable. That's the first thing I kind of did. I've always been really conscious about money, and trying to make more money, and just, being debt free have always been my kind of top priorities. But only until like a year and a half or 2 years ago is when I started tracking my money, and that made a really big difference.
Yeah. So in terms of 3 categories, income, what you do with your money, which I guess for people that are super money conscious and focused on financial independence, it's mostly like investing, like they're investing their
Yeah.
money, and then expenses. What are you doing with that middle section? Like what are you doing with your money after you make it and before you spend it?
Yeah, I have a totally like unconventional, everyone says automate things, and so I would make money, I would pretty much invest a lot of it, a big chunk of it. I was investing 50%, 60% of my income into either mutual funds, ETFs, some stocks, and I always try a bunch of stuff too. Like I am all over the place. I have a robo-advisor, I have direct investing, and then I have another kind of thing going on.
And actually, that's something I want people to know too, is that you can open as many accounts as you
Yeah.
want. Like you can open as many TFSA accounts as you want, or like you can
Just got to track the limit.
Yeah, as long as you don't over contribute in like the grand scheme of the total amount. But you can have one at this bank, that bank, this brokerage, whatever. So I think people sometimes get too caught up in like, this is my one TFSA account at this bank and that's all I can do. I don't know what else to do, kind of thing. Like you can experiment and like try different things. So
even the fact that I broke away from a bank, because so many of us are loyal to a bank since we open our first bank account and we stay with them for life.
Right.
And when I got my mortgage, I didn't really like the mortgage conditions that they were giving me. And I'm like, I don't know about this. I was asking around, and that's my main thing too, just ask questions. I was asking around, my friend went with the credit union, I met with the credit union people, I was like, this sounds a lot better. Went with the credit union and really started exploring other options, not just the main banks. So that's how I also found robo-advisors too. So I think a main thing too for people is just to not be scared to try new things, because
Right.
there's a lot out there. And I remember reading a quote that said, the banks are not your friend, and so I just repeat that all the time, and I'm like, the banks are not your friends. There's a place for banks. I still use a big bank for some of my stuff, but you can still do a lot of other, you can have other accounts that help you.
Right.
Yeah.
And just a quick question. So you don't have to say which bank, but was your first bank the same that your parents used?
Yes.
Yeah. And I have this theory where like that's the most common thing.
It is.
Just because like you become an adult and you don't know what to do with your money, so you're doing the same things that your parents helped you set up or that you watch them do, and you learn from your parents. I feel like financially, people learn from their parents.
They do.
So early
And
on.
sometimes people's parents don't teach them the proper finances. So,
Right.
or don't know. And I've had a lot of people tell me, like, my parents are horrible with money, or like my parents don't invest, or they don't know how, or they think it's too complicated. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be rough, but
Yeah.
anyone can figure it out, I think.
Yeah.
I hope.
And that's why you've created communities, and we're talking about it openly like this, because you should be learning all throughout your entire life, I think. Like, there's always room to learn, basically.
There's always room to learn. Yeah.
So where do you want to take ambitious adults next?
I'm in this really interesting, calm phase in my life right now where I'm really letting my projects just roll. I haven't created a clear plan for the next kind of 4 or 5 months, because I quit my job and I'm still working with clients and I'm just figuring out. So I don't have a clear answer for that yet, but I have a few projects on the go. I have events on the go, some partnerships, some brand partnerships. So yeah.
And I saw you were doing some like speaking engagements and things like that.
Yeah, speaking engagements. People want to learn about it, and I think I try not to make things with gender kind of, lens. But but I think people are missing a female voice in the finance industry, or like young females talking about money. Because we're so used to seeing a certain kind of personality talk about money, and it kind of feels demeaning sometimes, because you're like, oh, well, I'm screwed, or like I'm so behind, or like this guy's got it figured out, or like this guy came from money, and so people just disassociate from that.
Right.
And so, I think I'm just a new voice that adds a different perspective, and so people are responding to that and just want to learn more. I'm like, okay, here you go. Like, this is what I know. Good luck.
Yeah. If you want to learn more, I'll keep sharing.
Yeah. I'm like, I literally read information, digest it, simplify it, and share it. Like, I'm not creating anything new. Everything is out there. But if you want to learn, like, from a professional, here are the different kinds of professionals available, which is another complicated topic because people don't know the difference between financial advisors, certified financial planners, financial coaches, there's so many kinds of financial people, and the regular people will just tap out. They're like, this is too complicated, this is not worth it.
Right.
Yeah. So
I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that you bought a house.
Yeah.
And you're 27?
Yeah. Yeah, I was 24 when I bought it.
Okay, cool. So you bought a house at 24. I want to know your take on real estate, because I feel like you can't get away in a financial conversation without at least talking about real estate. So many people think that real estate is like the be all and the end all of investing. It's where all money should go and all that kind of stuff. And I have a different perspective, and other people have different perspectives. So I want to know what's your perspective?
Yeah, at the time I bought my house, I was not thinking about kind of the financial gains or, the real estate market and what this meant for my future. Like, I was just going through a breakup. I needed a place to live, and it was a really emotional decision that took a month. Like, from the time I started looking for a house to the time I moved in was just a 1 month process. So it was just too much of a whirlwind to consider all, property costs and appreciation costs. But in retrospect, I have no regrets, because I bought it in an up-and-coming neighborhood, in an up-and-coming city, and I do think that it's like a good investment in the long run. Rents are going up in Hamilton. My mortgage is super low because I put a 20% down payment. So my mortgage, no one is paying that in rent. So in my situation, I think it worked out in the long run. And yeah, it's interesting because my partner David works in the real estate world, and so he'll inject a lot of wisdom and his perspective.
Yeah.
The main thing that I've learned about is how people aren't so debt averse in the real estate world, which I grew up being. So
same. So yeah. I grew up the same way, which is that you never want to have debt.
Yeah.
Debt is bad, debt is evil, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like as I'm growing up, I'm starting to see it more with like a clear lens.
Yeah.
Because while that may be true, like, you have to consider the other side as well, which is that if I take on this big debt, is that an asset to me, or is it like a liability? Like, is it costing me money, or is it making me money? And depending on how you look at it and the way that you handle debt, which is super important, like, that's a whole conversation on its own. Does debt make you feel really bad? Do you need to get debt off your shoulders, or can you go through life very happy with debt in real estate and kind of pay that off like as time goes on? So yeah, it's an interesting conversation.
I'm opening my perspective. Normally I would have said, no, just play it safe, but I'm definitely becoming more and more aware of the different schools of thought. And even within the real estate community, there's a lot of schools of thought in terms of leveraging in debt. So I'm open to buying more properties, but I'm not 100% there yet.
Same. So I always have this conversation with people, and we'll talk about real estate, and it seems like I'm just dumping on it. But then as the conversation goes, like, I admit to them, like, I would rather buy like 10 properties and like rent most of them and live in one, and then versus just buying one property. Just because to me, it's like the amount of debt isn't really the issue. It's more like diversifying. Mm-hmm. It's like if you had 10 properties and you're renting them all out, like the occupancy rate of those properties is probably generating you income. So it's kind of like an asset, whereas maybe you're living in the main floor of one of those houses and that you don't rent out. So yeah, which is kind of weird, because if you think about buying one house versus 10, the debt is so much higher with 10. Mm-hmm. So it's like more risky. Like, why would I be more into that? But it's the idea that if you diversify and you kind of set yourself up for less risk, I feel like it's more like understandable from my perspective.
Yeah. No, I don't think I would put all my eggs in one basket. Like I would still invest in other things, and also in real estate. So
Yeah, which is that's a good topic too. So
this is gonna be a 5-hour segment.
I know. So when I talk to a lot of people about real estate, especially beginner investors, they want to know, should they buy a house and like pay off that debt as soon as possible, or should they be making regular payments and investing the rest of their money, and should they be investing it into like RRSPs or TFSAs or putting it into something else? So, and I always give them my perspective, but I was just wondering, like, what's yours? You put down 20% on your house.
I put 20% because I wasn't really thinking about saving it and then using the rest of the money for another house. I was just like, I need to buy a house. Like I was beelining to be a homeowner.
Right.
And my dad, who is my number one kind of influence when it comes to finance, is very debt averse. He's like, put 20% down, because if you don't, you're gonna have to pay like the insurance, the home insurance fees, and this is what it's gonna be in the long run. And I was like, okay. And I had the money, so I was like, whatever, it makes sense for me. My next house, I don't think I would put 20% down. So. And
so do you think you'll take that route of kind of paying off this current house, living in it, and then purchasing another property for a rental?
No, I don't think I'll just be having to carry both I think I'll have to carry both mortgages, yeah. For a long time, I was on track to pay my house off earlier, but I've changed my plan, which I think is another important thing to tell people is like...
Yeah. Which is actually totally okay.
Yeah, you can change.
Yeah.
Go ahead and change your plan. Like, I mean, I have a lot of spreadsheets as well that help me analyze my life decisions. So I try not to be really...
closet spreadsheet.
Yeah, I am. I know, I'm an open spreadsheeter. This is a well-known fact. So I'll have different scenarios, and that's the main thing is what works for you. Like, what does your life look like? Who do you want to spend your life with? You know, your incomes, your expenses, what are your expenses day to day? What about in 5 years? And then based on all those variables, you can be like, do I want to pay off this house earlier, or should I pay it off a little bit and then buy another house, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah.
So do you want to travel? Do you want to live in one of the houses? Do you want to have a duplex? Like, so many options.
Absolutely. That's my favorite topic, is like, what do you want to do? Because that answers so many other questions.
Yeah.
Like, what you want to do with your life determines what you should do with all your money. Like, you should be either investing it in certain things or putting aside some of it for travel, because travel brings you so much happiness, or collecting whatever you want to collect, or buying properties, or buying investments, or quitting your job. Like, there's so many facets of life. You have to figure out kind of what you want, and that determines, I guess, what you want to do with your money.
Yeah, I'm in a travel camp. So, like, I will do anything I need to do so I can travel. Like, yeah.
Cool.
That's what kind of guides my decisions.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, okay, so last question. Where are you traveling to next?
Booking a trip to Mexico.
Awesome.
So I have family in Mexico. I was born in Mexico and I grew up in Mexico. And I try to go to Mexico every year when it's cold. So
escape that terrible Canadian winter.
Yeah. I spent 3 months in Mexico a couple years ago, and that was amazing because I was just chilling and trying to do a little bit of work. So it's kind of what I want to get towards. For sure, I want to live in Canada, but escape Canadian winters every year if possible. Yeah.
That's funny. All right, cool. Thank you so much for chatting with me. We'll have to have you on this again.
Yeah.
And we'll check back in and see where you're at.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.